Right. Good evening, everybody. Tonight is this is the public hearing of the Planning Board of Whately. Per the legal notice that has been posted and appeared in the Greenfield Reporter on September 2nd, September 9th. The Planning Board of Whately will hold a public hearing pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, the Zoning Act, Section 5, on September 17th, 2025 at 6 p.m. to discuss proposed zoning changes. The hearing is taking place here in Town Hall and also on Zoom. At present, nobody aside from me is on Zoom. The board is proposing to amend section zoning bylaw section 171.28.4 Aquifer Protection District, adding a prohibition battery energy storage systems having an aggregate energy storage capacity exceeding 300 kilowatt hours. Wording of this change has been available. So I've opened the public hearing. I've done so at 6:05, or no, I'm sorry, at that clock. 6:08. Before we open for public comment, there, at this point, except for John Lucan of the Water Commissioners, there's no other member of the public present. I want to share with all of you that tonight's zoning bylaw amendment proposal has undergone town council review. I have some comments, so I'm going to just share my screen so we can talk about, get clear on what town council has shared with us. All right, so I will summarize this as town council made a number of minor edits, non-substantive edits to the text of the bylaw. Nothing that would substantially change what we're talking about tonight. Everyone should be aware that when this bylaw proposal was originally drafted, we were using numbers on the then approved zoning bylaws. The town went through a recodification of its general and zoning bylaws that was passed last November at special town meeting. Those recodified zoning bylaws awaited Attorney General approval before they could go into effect. About a week or so ago, Whately received the letter from the Attorney General's office that the recodified bylaws, including the zoning bylaws, had been approved. The recodification changed some of the numbers. So what was originally section 171.28.4 Aquifer Protection District in the previously approved zoning bylaws has now become 171-32. Hence that. There were also changes to the section where terms were defined. Previously, it was 171.37, now it's 171-43. And of course, there were some other minor changes related to the recodification. Nothing of any significance, except now we're dealing with the correct numbering for the currently approved zoning bylaws. Questions about that? You can see here in red what town council, and I just received this like 10 o'clock this morning, so you're all seeing this for the first time. As basically I did just like an hour or so ago when I checked my email. So we can see, so there's nothing that town council said, no showstoppers, there's nothing illegal about this or inappropriate, so everything is fine. But the town council made certain wording changes that you can see here. Town council did note, town council has also reviewed at our request the draft, the general battery energy storage system bylaw, which we're not considering tonight. Town council noted for this one, that this one sets a threshold at 300 kilowatt hours, as we just determined at our last meeting, which is inconsistent with the draft best bylaw that he's reviewed. But we're not taking it forward yet, et cetera, so that's not an issue. But other than that, town council had no other substantive comments besides the wording changes you see here. So what I would propose we do is one of you makes a motion to accept all revisions proposed by town council to the bylaw proposal.
I'll make a motion to accept all the revisions to this proposal by David Deskey, the Whately Town Council.
Motion has been made. I'll give the second. So motion has been made by JD, seconded by Mike. We're all physically present, so there's no need for a roll call vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, no abstention. So it passes unanimously. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm going to,
Oh, I also read that if only we have to roll call.
yes, if a member is remote, then we have to do a roll call. So I wanna just do is, I wanna accept all changes and stop tracking. Okay. And I will, so this is what we are now, this amended bylaw proposal is what we're having a hearing on tonight. So the way this plays out is we have an opportunity for any comments about the proposal from the public. And we have time for Q&A in general, and then we close the public hearing, and then it's up to the planning board members to discuss the proposal and decide what we want to do about it. Okay, so I reached out to the water department. So I want to put on record that in the time since we scheduled tonight's public hearing, I became aware and have circulated guidance to all of you from the Mass Department of Environmental Protection, Mass DEP, related to the ongoing state effort to promulgate new regulations for energy storage systems and renewable energy and also electric vehicle chargers. So I circulated a multi-page letter on that subject. Just on, I believe it was September 14th, just a few days ago. I haven't yet, Judy circulated an email to all of us, but with just a few days ago, the state has the Mass Department of and Mass DOER, forget what that stands for, Department of Environment and Resources. Anyway, they are all a part of this whole state effort related to the coming out of the 2024 Climate Act. So they published draft regulations for public comment. So now, and I've only started to look at those and try to figure out what that has to do with what we're talking about tonight, perhaps, what we might be talking about for a general battery storage bylaw. And I can't say that at this point, I have anything that I can say on that subject, except that we are right now doing all of this at a time where the legal environment for all of this is in flux. There's a comment period. And then we understand that the expectations that in late March of next year, final regulations that apply to battery energy storage systems and other renewable energy systems will be released by the state.
So that'll be the state's new stuff that anybody who wants to build any of these facilities has to.
That's right. That's
So
right.
in the meantime, it's still more.
That's right. So right now, there are a few things that we believe we know at this point that seem to be confirmed by the guidance document we received that came out on the 20th of August. Number one, as it pertains to battery energy storage systems in general, the state is drawing a line at 100 megawatts of storage capacity, saying that for battery energy storage systems greater than 100 megawatts, all permitting of those is going to be handled by the state energy facility siting board under various new guidelines that are being developed. So they're taking away local control over these very large renewable, or we'll just call them clean energy facilities. And it doesn't pertain just to battery storage, it pertains to solar voltaics and other kinds of, and then the thresholds are different depending on what we're talking about. But for battery storage, above 100 megawatts, it's, as far as we know today, that won't be anything that local zoning will have a say on. In the range below 100 megawatts, considered small clean energy infrastructure, local zoning and regulations will still apply. That's what we understand today.
So have you guys been catching up, learning about how big is 100 megawatts on the ground? So I have no idea.
We've been doing some research
How bad?
on size about that. And in fact, that relates to tonight's proposal. It seems like, so without giving you a whole disposition on this and blazing everyone's eyes, just to give you one sense that we understand with current technology, something that might be in the range of 300 kilowatt hours to about maybe 3 to 5 megawatt hours. Some storage in that range can fit roughly within a 20-foot standard shipping container. Okay, 300 kilowatt hours to about 5 megawatt hours. And then you can start expanding that. I've seen some data that suggests once you get to about 100 megawatt hours, you start to be dealing with facilities that can cover 4 to 8 acres of land in terms of everything that's needed. So that's what we know, which is not a lot. And that threshold, that 300 kilowatt hour threshold played a role in our thinking about this proposal, because the logic is below about 300 kilowatt hours of storage, we're dealing with energy storage systems that are so small that they can fit in a garage, a basement. They're essentially invisible. And we take that to mean the risk of contamination to the environment due to fires and accidents is low and containable. We've noted things like today's Ford 150 Lightning truck has a storage capacity of about 130 kilowatt hours. And no one's talking about banning those because they could destroy an aquifer if they
So
fly.
the batteries, yeah.
So
So we could all do a little one of these little units, and the guy bought photovoltaic cells my property.
Yeah.
Get to tie one of those into my own battery storage.
well, I am an example of a person who had that at home. I have a 12.5 kilowatt hour battery storage system tied to my rooftop solar, which is only a third of what my daily home usage
Yeah,
is.
it's doing a pinch.
Yeah. But I think that if my system were to, explode, it would perhaps lead to the destruction of my home. But if my home were situated over the aquifer, it probably would contaminate the aquifer any more than if any one of the homes located on the aquifer caught fire. Would it contaminate the aquifer? I mean, there's a lot of toxins in a house that catches fire. That will go into the ground, and the groundwater. Okay, sorry for that.
No,
Anyway,
I'm getting a sense where you guys are up to, that's fine.
we've been just doing
I appreciate that.
a crazy amount of work on this. So, as the sole member of the public here tonight, um, you obviously understand the three zones of the Aquifer Protection District, zones 1, 2, and 3. You understand that we have in our Aquifer Protection District, we have a section of prohibited uses that enumerates a number of things that are not permitted within any of these three zones of the Aquifer Protection District. And this proposal simply adds another prohibition to say nothing, no battery storage systems with an aggregate energy storage capacity in excess of that 300 kilowatt hours threshold.
So if I'm not mistaken, you're basically restricting it to home use. Kind of thing.
Or commercial. We
Small.
look, for example, at town offices here, what their typical daily energy use is, just to use it as maybe an example of a small commercial enterprise. And we found that it ranged from about 100 kilowatt hours per day to about 275 kilowatt hours per day here. You know, and you can imagine with HVAC or whatever. And if you think about a battery storage system being to maybe store up to a day or so's worth of usage, then 300 kilowatt hours would seem to be sufficient per our logic. And that for residents, as we know, there's data saying the typical residential use is about 30 kilowatt hours a day on average. And the town office's average was about 150 kilowatt hours a day. So, and we did that.
Computers are on all the time.
Yeah, right, so there you are, we figured 300 kilowatt hours is sufficient for small, for typical small, low risk. Residential battery applications and commercial applications.
Okay.
But I will point out and remind everyone, we're not aware of any data that associates the risk of fires and thus contamination of aquifers with systems of these sizes, right? This is driven by, this proposal is based on, as I was saying to you in the pre-meeting, this hypothetical chain of events. Battery storage system has a fire. That fire is so significant and it requires firefighting activities that involve sufficiently large amounts of water. And those waters get contaminated, flow into the ground, contaminate the aquifers.
The electrical inspector in Whately, or FCCIP, the ultimate inspector was on our site today. And expressing that he's seeing the systems go through now that are in a shipping container and they're they have sprinkler heads built into them. But because of the chemical reaction, it just keeps going and all the contaminated water just cruises on the top of the containers and dumps in the ground.
Oh, interesting,
That's what he's saying.
okay,
Because the chemical reaction, the fire is not,
okay,
so the head goes off and fills it with water and then all that stuff just pours off the top of it until, I don't know.
so, yeah, so we don't know so this is where we are, we know these kinds of stories, we don't know how frequently it occurs. We don't
World.
have any, we don't have any data that says that's happened and then there's been groundwater contamination. We just don't know, but the general feeling is a kind of better safe than sorry. People are concerned, that's why we have this proposal, so we've tried to come up with a reasonable, a reasonable threshold for deciding when something should or shouldn't be allowed within any zone of the Aquifer Protection District.
The thing that'll be unknown as time goes on, people start doing these things more. Because that's the way the systems are going. I have a grid tied system, there's no battery. I had a house in New Hampshire, we moved out from that, had a grid tied system with battery backup.
Okay,
So it was a whole nice different system.
yeah,
But now I have in my basement, in a box, with circulation of air, and it's something that was built, designed into it to try to prevent any kind of fire.
okay,
Now, most of us would do that, but there's always the guy who won't.
right,
Or, the misuse of the system is an issue we can't project.
that's true too.
So sizing it in the aquifer protection district, as I think basically anyway, sizing it so that if there were a fire or disaster, it wouldn't have a major impact on that person's property for one thing, let alone the environment and water supply. I mean, the aquifer, it's a miracle there's that much water coming out of the ground down here. It's quite a thing hydrogeologically. And there is some protection in all the clay that's within the valley. But I think what we see most of the recharge comes uphill.
Mhm.
So the west side of the railroad tracks is the most important part of town, right, when it comes to drinking water.
Does everyone here know like how to use or have looked at the online map, to actually see the boundary of our aquifer protection district? Okay, so I don't, it is quite large and there are a lot of, so one of the things, as I was looking into this from this letter, it seemed to suggest, at least on first reading, now Judy seems to be here. It seems to suggest that, zone 1 is controlled by the public water supply, by the water department.
Yeah, so it's, they have to own control it, no non-water supply, illegally allowed within that point of radius.
So, and that all of the zone 1 land is owned or controlled by the water
It's
department.
controlled, I don't know if it's all owned.
Okay. And what I understand from the drinking water regulations, not being no expert, is that the drinking water regulations in and of themselves preclude anything like battery storage in zone 1,
The Fed regs, I mean, the state regs,
state regs.
yeah, I don't really know.
Yeah.
I've not looked that closely. at it.
It seems like in the guidance letter we received, which I can, it may be worth people just seeing that. Stuff.
I mean, the world of prohibition of uses within the recharge area of a public drinking water supply, you'd want to keep out anything that could potentially really damage it. Maybe houses work fine unless people start dumping crap down the drain all the time. Throw springs in the ground. What not long ago, and it probably still some guys out there, keep the dust down on the dirt road in the summer by spreading used motor oil on it. Sure. My neighbor used to do that.
So this letter, I'm showing you a part of the letter that came from the Mass DEP. This is in a section on protecting public health and the environment. And within there's a piece about drinking water. This asserts that battery storage is prohibited within the area immediately surrounding a public water supply well or well field. So that's an assertion. I can't yet independently verify that.
Well,
Whether it's authoritative.
For a zone 1, it certainly would apply.
Where I was reading and rereading this section, because now then we get to zones 2 and 3, this seems to say that there might be, that state law might apply, but in zones 2 and 3, but only on land owned or controlled by the public water supply. So to the best of your knowledge, and whatever you can tell me, do you believe our water department has any jurisdiction, control, any review authority for things happening in zones 2 or 3?
Not really.
Not really.
The way that would work is CBA or planning board or selectmen would have to ask us,
I see.
we don't have any authority over it. I mean, remember, it's enterprise, and we're a little business in town providing drinking water. It's a product, we're selling a product,
Okay.
and it has to be guaranteed pure and all that stuff. So that's what you're at, and
Yeah.
the government control part doesn't come from water departments, town, state.
Okay, but there, I suppose, are, not ours, but there may be water supply systems where land in their zones 2 or 3 are in fact owned or controlled by the public water supply. And
That's possible, yeah.
but it's
The more
certainly
you
not
go
true.
through that was, I mean, I always told people, for the years I worked in this field, if you really want to protect your water supply, buy the land and own it.
Sure,
Then you don't have to worry about other uses.
that's right, get all those people,
You can't buy 500 acres.
get all those people out of zones 2 and 3, right, that's not gonna fly here. Okay,
No, but it's not a problem. You know, it really shouldn't be a problem. People living on the land, if septic systems are doing their job, and water that's been penetrating down is a problem. You're not dumping gasoline and stuff around. There's always stuff comes off of our cars and off the driveways and the drains, you know, and it ends up in trickling through the ground and getting cleaned up. Some people, me, we're testing the water all the time. Right? I think people with private wells should be more concerned, whatever they do on their properties, or like will affect their water. But we're testing by the state schedule year round and annually for some things, every 3 years for others, monthly for like bacteria, the things that can really cause people to get sick. And that's where the state's controlling us.
okay,
So we have to make sure the water meets some quality standards. It means that, I mean, I'm drinking it, we're all drinking it, and you don't want it to be bad.
okay,
You can't control the minerals sometimes, but you can certainly control, make sure it's safe.
okay. So the reason I just wanted to check in with, you, the water department, is just to confirm that. The proposed zoning bylaw wasn't effectively redundant because the Massachusetts drinking water regulations address this and basically would preclude battery storage of any kind within any of the 3 zones. And it seems like the drinking water regulations preclude battery storage in zone 1, but leave zones 2 and 3 up to local municipalities through their.
Well, it says that zone 2, you can have, right here, it says. That zone 2, it's allowed, but it has to be completely contained. If there's and it says, if there's a fire, the byproduct of that has to be completely contained.
Yeah, but.
So, like, if you have your, your container and it's flooding water out, I'm assuming just like a fuel tank, it has to have a bunker it's sitting in. Well, it's much.
But it complicates if you're proposing that use, you know, within the area.
We're fortunate most of our water comes from deep water artesian wells versus salted reservoirs.
There was a lot of, in the 90s, in particular, when they revised the Safe Drinking Water Act, and they came up with a lot more rule, a lot more contaminants to test for. They got to have the synthetic and organic chemicals and organic chemicals and inorganic chemicals. And we say, IOCs, SOCs, you just gotta think gasoline, it's ethylene problems, the most part, so they are toxic by nature.
Right.
You spray things to kill things, they're toxic.
Yeah.
But, you know, so all this monitoring is done for that stuff, but in the meantime, you don't wanna see it in the water, so if you have a use that might introduce that sort of contaminant into like storage tanks for a fuel oil company. A couple thousand gallon tanks in the ground, he has to have that contained. So where there be a leak or something go wrong, there's none gonna spill out into the environment, it's gonna be like bunkers.
Right.
So you line it so it's impervious and you make it big enough to catch all the stuff. That's what you'd have to do.
Right.
So that way you protect it, to have that use without damaging the water. But it's always hard to tell, I mean, I always hated the zoning part of this one, they'll say like, here's the line in our map, here's the line in the sand.
Yeah,
With zone 2, it ends, zone 3 begins.
yeah,
Really? We don't know. I mean, that's a guess, it's the best educated guess based on a lot of scientific analysis, but it's still pretty much crapshoot.
Yeah.
You're not really sure what those lines are. You do know that if you dump it on the ground close to the well, it's going in. So the closer you are, the more you worry about it.
okay. Well, that was the primary reason that I just wanted to check in with the water department and try to get it as the closest to an expert an opinion.
I think you guys are wise to, this is still early, except the state's playing with it. God knows if the feds get their nose in it, what might happen. I mean, it's just, it's like going on with those PFOAs,
Yeah.
the forever chemicals.
Right,
I mean, they're everywhere and they're minute particles, but they're everywhere. And I'm 75, was 76 years old. I don't know what the hell's running around in my bloodstream and in my fat cells. Cause I've been,
A lot of them, everyone
a
has.
lot of stuff, yeah. I'm not dead, I'm still doing fine. But in the meantime, whenever you're dealing with public drinking water supplies, it's not an environmental business, it's not an environmental law, it's a public health.
Yeah.
That's why it's so strict. You can put stuff in the air, you can throw stuff out in the ground, but you can't put it in the drinking water. It's public health. So anyway, so you know, by limiting it in size so that it can be contained and it's basically keeping all of us private uses of our property, that's cool. Yeah, sure.
I am basically prepared to move on. I also, there are a number of prohibitions in zones 1, 2, and 3 enumerated in our aquifer protection district. Where I think, individually, they could imply that battery storage couldn't go there because they would necessarily involve this or that. But I'm not prepared to argue that or take that position, so I think I'm okay with just the idea of adding this straightforward prohibition.
If I may say, one of the issues we're all gonna face with this stuff over time is that perception of battery storage for photovoltaics. You're gonna people are gonna see something big and covering a plot of ground.
Yeah.
As opposed to something that fits behind my garage,
Right,
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So this is a public education issue, it's gonna keep coming with this.
indeed, indeed.
And I just urge you, if anything you guys are ever dealing with in terms of proposed uses or things or sort of things that, where the water supply, public water supply, could be impacted, give us a, I'd be glad to come to the meetings
Okay,
anytime.
that's,
I see a
Really?
lot, I've seen in my experience, a lot of people, towns wanting to use their public water system as a growth vehicle. And never really asking the water department if they got the water.
okay,
Just look at what they've been doing in Amherst the last few months, always proposed. Have they ever asked the guys to get the water supply?
yeah.
Do they know if they can handle that sewage down at that treatment plant? Where does that water go from that treatment plant? There's a little piss pot of a street right next to it. These are questions that nobody thinks to ask.
All right, well-
I do.
It's good to know we have a friend in the water department.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
that's been very helpful, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a
Okay.
good night, friend.
So I see that Judy has joined, our one other member of the public. So the public hearing is still open for public comment. Judy, is there anything that you would like to say at this point? Otherwise we'll close.
I think I made my points last time. I think this is an excellent thing to do. And I would, if one is writing up comments for the public hearing, I would remind the Attorney General that Whately lost all the wells in East Whately because of contaminated public water, and it's very important to the town to maintain the health and safety.
So noted. It was interesting that, of course, all that contamination was, to my understanding, due to farming activity, which we can't regulate anyway, and hopefully changes in farming practices of precluding additional contamination, but
But I
Yeah,
think
I think-
that augurs that we should be trying to regulate where we can.
okay, very good. Very good, then, seeing no other members of the public present, I'm going to close the public hearing. Closing the public hearing, do we have to vote to close the public hearing? I'll consult with an expert, former member, Judy, do we vote to close the public hearing? I can't remember whether,
I think one does. It's to be safe.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
okay. The motion has been made by Laura, thank you, and seconded by Mike. All in favor of closing the public hearing? That's unanimous. Very good. So the public hearing is closed. And so now, we're going to have a discussion amongst the 4 members of the board only about what action we want to take on this. So, now I'm just gonna keep my big mouth shut for a moment and just see what people want to say.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah. Nothing to say.
Nothing, nothing that, okay.
I sincerely hope that technology advances in the next half dozen years, that perhaps your neighborhood could buy a BESS and put it on a parcel that's not buildable, that you and your neighbors will chip in on and would work, and I hope that we're not regulating with this to stop that innovation,
Yeah,
and that the proposed help it could be for communities. small neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Up on Poplar Hill, and Mike and his neighbors and family could buy one and put it there, and we're not gonna be hindering that. That's what I hope. It doesn't come out of this.
Right.
line.
I think I've struggled a lot with the threshold, that 300 kilowatt hour threshold, as I said before. And you know, I've done a little bit of a draft report for the select board, but which I'll share because I wanna get some input before we wrap for tonight on that. Once we vote on what we take action on, but it does concern me that we are making this regulation based on very, to my mind, me personally, very shaky reasoning. You know, this hypothetical sequence of events for which we don't have much data, we don't really know what the risks are. We have picked a 300 kilowatt hour threshold. Really more like because we know people are concerned and they like numbers like that to be as small as possible. But we don't know that if it were a megawatt or 5 megawatts, that would be more or less risky to the aquifer. We can't point to any data that says, you know, below 300 kilowatt hours, you're safe, above that, you know, your aquifer. And I plan to stipulate that in the report, that we are doing this because people are concerned. There is a reasonable basis for people's concern about battery storage. There are documented cases of these accidents. There's, you know, not a lot of data on the adverse impacts of those accidents. But you've only, you know, aquifers are not easy to come by.
No,
So,
you can't come by them.
that's right, you can't make,
There aren't any other.
you
new
can't
ones
make
at
another
this
one. That's right, and we don't wanna go back to having it trucked in from afar.
point.
So as sort of an engineer and scientist, this bylaw makes me uncomfortable, but I can see that it's reasonable. And I would hope that when it reaches the Attorney General's office, it would not be seen as unreasonably regulating battery storage in this defined area.
Yeah.
And I am very interested to see how as these state regulations play out, and I see there are going to be site selection scores, and there's gonna be some complicated formula where they can decide where best can go on the land, and I'm only scratching this. I will,
Sure, the
Spend you a
government
link.
will make it more complicated than it's made.
yes, but for now, and it's entirely possible that by next year, what we're doing tonight may be
Yeah.
invalidated.
Yeah.
Okay, but,
The technology
okay,
could-
so then our next step is for somebody to make a motion to, I think the motion would be to
Approve
as amended
amended.
for recommendation to the select board. And we don't get to approve the bylaw, we just basically recommend it to the select board. So that would be the language of the motion, to approve the bylaw as amended for recommendation to the select board.
We're recommending to town floor.
Well, actually, we just recommended the select board, is my understanding, and they decide what goes in the warrant article.
Okay. Alright.
So would somebody care to, now that I've kind of set you up for success, Mike?
I would make a motion to accept as amended to the select board.
That'll work, so Mike.
Yeah, those don't
has-
right. Mine
says
says.
Accept the bylaw proposal
Bylaw
as amended
Yeah,
for recommendation to the select board.
Uh,
So Mike has made that,
I'll second the motion.
and
Okay.
Laura has seconded the motion.
Okay,
So all in favor of the motion, aye.
I,
There are nobody opposed and no abstentions, so it passes unanimously. So now, here's the schedule we're on. The select board meets next Wednesday. And we will not have another meeting before then. So what I want to do is I want to screen share and give you, and maybe take a little bit of commentary on a draft report I've started to put together that I already think is a little wordy and I'm going to try to cut down, but I want you to, want to get some key points. Then what I'm going to do is draft it, circulate it to all of you by email, and ask you to send any comments back.
Okay.
I mean, in an ideal world, we would have a public meeting to discuss this, but I think if we all agree on the key points tonight in public,
Yes.
will be good.
Well, our public meeting this evening was not very well attended, so I don't know if it would make a big difference.
Still meeting
But when-
I'm sorry,
Still meeting on the 30th.
our next regular. We'll get to that.
Okay.
All right. Getting all choked up in this.
Is this still recording or no?
We are still recording, because
Oh.
we're still
In
having a
session.
meeting.
In public.
Okay.
Still having a meeting. Okay, so, in advance of tonight's meeting, I just started to draft a report that we need to provide the select. There will be a summary of the public hearing. And in this case, it will have been attended by 2 members of the planning board, of the public, along with 4 members of, 2 members of the public and 4 members of the planning board. And really, I think the main comment, I mean, Judy made a comment about, including, a note in the report about Whately's history with aquifer contamination.
Yeah, cities really.
And I don't know if any of the comments that John provided, I mean, it could be, I'll add a comment that, a member of the water department provided input to the effect that the department had no direct jurisdiction over best projects in zones 2 and 3. I think that was essentially yes.
I think that's fair.
Okay. I don't know if there were any other significant comments pertinent to the bylaw that we would want to include here. It is in fact the case that no written comments were received. And we will have voted 4-0 in favor of that. Just bear with me. Favor of proposal. Okay. I have included in my draft, because this report goes to the select board, but it then also becomes available to the public in advance of special town meeting. So I feel like we're writing to an audience that's not just the select board. So I wanted to include a little background on battery storage. I pulled this from various sources, including the letter, the August 20th letter I circulated to all of you from the Mass DEP. Just a little bit about battery storage. I've noted that this is about, the state is trying to decarbonize. The state's set ambitious targets, and the state considers best facilities important to achieving those emissions targets. That's all documented at the state level. I've included a little bit about the controversy to make the point that people are concerned and there's some reason for those concerns. It's generated controversy because of a small number of high-profile incidents. And there are a few examples. And I'm trying to present a balanced perspective here, that there's also limited data about adverse consequences. I did circulate to all of you those links to the webinars about battery storage. I did watch one of them and learn more about the Electric Power Research Institute, EPRI. And I looked at their best failure incident database. So this is all straight from EPRI. I feel like, again, I want to make, in our report, I want to be clear that there's controversy, people are concerned, but there's also evidence that the rate of incidents is maybe decreasing. Okay, so this is all more or less quoted from an EPRI. I want to include a little background on the Energy Storage System Study Committee. This may end up getting dropped, but I felt like there was some reason to lay out the origin of tonight's bylaw. So the committee was formed. This paragraph makes the point that in the absence of any zoning bylaw, battery storage can be established anywhere in town without any local oversight or control. And that was something that the ES3C pointed out. A little bit about our history of discussing the best bylaw, the fact that we didn't feel like we could get that for an annual, until next year. And then one member of the ES3C submitted this more limited zoning proposal. I think I can probably leave most of that out. I mean, like right now, this is like a first draft that needs. And so you'll have time after tonight to look at this and tell me if you think this would be helpful to members of the public. And I will try to get a short executive summary version of this.
Okay.
Right up front, so people don't have to read all of this, blah, blah, blah. But maybe it might even be good to just have it there.
Maybe just like
For the
a few more
record.
links, because it's 2025 and someone really is into it, they can find it.
Yeah,
I would
You know,
also, sorry,
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
you could even just bullet point, like, I do think it's somewhat helpful to have references to the meetings where we did discuss this more in depth. There's
Yep.
recordings, people want to watch it. You could probably just even bullet point and just say like, for additional information, also see meeting recordings of these dates or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. That's a good recommendation. I did include a little bit about some material about the regulatory environment being in flux. That there's the 2024 Climate Act, that the guidance that I circulated, all of you came out on August 20th, and so that included a link to that guidance. And I'm going to include a link to the September 12th publication of draft regulations. I made the point of saying, like, we're just beginning to review this guidance and assess it. And, have yet to review these draft regulations. Just putting that on the record. I then got to the intent of the bylaw, which we discussed tonight. Sort of summarizing that the idea is that if there's a large facility and it has a major fire, then the resulting public safety efforts needed to contain and extinguish it could result in large releases of toxic chemicals into the surrounding environment, contaminating aquifers and rendering them unsafe. And the last part I only started working on a little bit today, I think we need to sort of wrap up with an explanation of our recommendation. And I've got a few bullet points that I'd like your input on tonight. I think the first bullet point is, we agree that protecting the public water supply should be a priority.
Yep.
We accept that resident concerns about the adverse consequences within the APD are reasonable.
Yep.
We're unable, the third point is, we are unable to determine whether best facilities of any size within the APD present meaningful risks to groundwater in the event of fires. I think that's true. It's kind of a working assumption.
Could we say the board is unable to determine whether, use the word reasonable in there somewhere, like we don't have a reasonable.
Whether present.
I don't know where to put it because I'm terrible at this, but
Okay,
does that make sense? Like we don't have any reasonable evidence to point that this is a real problem. Yeah, reasonable evidence.
I'll just note this
Yeah,
as
I mean, if you could.
something that I can weave in.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lack of reasonable evidence or something like that.
Yeah, well, I don't have reasonable evidence, lack of reasonable,
Lack of evidence, I guess.
lack of
we would say.
evidence.
Yeah,
Or
Yeah, just-
reliable evidence.
Something that's like,
Fact.
limited information is available about
Yeah,
these
there you go.
systems.
perfect.
I mean, I'm not trying to. I mean, I'm just trying to be candid about, with people and the select board about what we're trying to do. And that we consider 300, the last one we considered 300 kilowatt hours a reasonable threshold for determining when a BES should be excluded from the APD. The board believes that 300 kilowatt hours is sufficient storage capacity for we love that word, reasonable range of low risk residential and commercial energy storage applications. So that's where I am right now. I'm gonna do some more, massaging and trying to boil this down to something a little bit more consumable. One other bit where your input is welcome. I will make sure that this goes to the AgCom, the Board of Health, Concom, the Energy Committee, the Energy Storage System Study Committee, Fire Department, us, Police Department, Zoning Board of Appeals. Is there any other board or commission?
Our stakeholder. The FCCIP.
I mean, I should include the building commissioner, don't you think?
Yeah.
No, I think. I was going to,
Just FCCIP, that covers the building commissioner, the wiring, plumbing, all of them, that is.
What does that stand for? Franklin County?
Franklin County Cooperative Inspection Program.
okay, so I'll just put FCCIP and then I'll spell it out.
Yeah. FCC.
Okay.
I'm on the advisory report for that. That's
Okay.
representatives.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do, we've had our vote. We've got tonight's input. I'm gonna try to wordsmith this within the next couple of days, get it out to all of you. And if there's something in there that you feel is misrepresenting the sort of consensus position of the board, please feel free to send that to me, and I'll try to make sure everyone feels comfortable with what we submit to the board.
Okay.
Okay, very good. All right, then I'm gonna close on this. And we'll just wrap up. Our next public meeting will be on September 30th. I think that was a Tuesday? We're back on the Tuesday schedule.
And that was at 5:30 or 6?
I think it was back to, I have it as 5:30.
That's fine.
5:30 on Tuesday, September 30th. What I know is, besides perhaps more discussion about a general battery storage bylaw, and I think we do need to maybe start to contemplate what these draft regulations might mean, and do we keep working on a battery storage bylaw? Do we wait? That might be a topic for consideration, but I know two other things are gonna be on our agenda for that night, aside from battery storage, like, could there be anything else we're talking about? So we've been asked to provide input into a continuity of operations. So the town, all departments worry about how we would all continue to function in the event of, I don't know, a flood, a disaster. So there's a template. I'm gonna try to do some thinking and drafting about that, there's not much that, I mean, we would be able, I think, from a continuity of operation standpoint, we could meet via Zoom. Most of I mean, there's a concern about physical records. Because there are planning board physical files. So I don't know what would happen if they were all destroyed,
Right,
if this building burned down.
it's probably a larger digitizing project for the
Yeah.
town general.
But I believe, like, I believe the vault here is fireproof. And whether it's flood, that I don't know.
I mean, is any of our stuff in like fireproof safes? Are any of our
That's what I don't know.
file cabinets fireproof safes?
So,
Like, we have them at work we have to keep certain things in the fire safe at work.
yeah,
And it's just a file cabinet,
So-
so cement.
tonight's not the time to have this
Right.
discussion, but I'm gonna send this out. It's in theory due on September 30th. But I imagine if we're a little late, it's not the end of the world. That's number one on our agenda. You remember the master, not the town, I keep wanting to call it the master plan. It's not called the master plan. The, FERCog has been working on aspects, chapters of the master plan
Mhm.
that are up for us to review. So I believe we're going to get copies of those chapters that I'll circulate. And we'll have a discussion about it, and I'll try to find out what a deadline is for us to have feedback to the drafters at FERCog about that. So I think those are gonna be two of the three items, the third item being whatever you want to do about battery storage.
I had, see. I was here getting mail from finance committee the other day. We don't review mail in our meetings. I think you could.
Who's we?
As a
Oh,
board, you
oh.
get the mail.
Yes,
Just bring up if it's relevant. Well, like the Conservation Commission has an agenda item, everything during your email received.
yeah. And the planning board,
So we have mail.
and the planning board has never done that.
Okay.
Not to say that we shouldn't,
Well, it's just a matter of that you get the mail and you interpret it if.
Yeah.
You need to see it or not.
yeah, and I think a better practice that's now starting to be put into practice is scanning those
I like
letters
that,
as
'cause I know
they're.
you sent one out to the, I like.
Yeah, because now that Rusty's gone,
Right.
by the way,
Yes, Rusty,
he got a better,
He went back.
he got a job opportunity elsewhere.
Oh.
So he left, he was supposed to be the one looking at the mail, sending to me what's like relevant, I guess.
Okay.
But, so now I'm in charge of the mail, so there's two new things in there I just saw. But other than that, yeah, I'm supposed to look at it, but yeah, I can scan it, scan mail, and then whatever is relevant to filing. Like, for instance, for the ZBA, we got returned mail regarding to, the public hearing that we had for River Road, so we just put the return mail via butter mail in with that file, so it shows proof that we did send out, it got returned.
okay,
So that's how we have that in the main office, and then, like, the fireproof stuff, yes, we do, there's a cabinet for that. I didn't have it on
But
there.
my whole thing was, we as a board should know, we should decide what's relevant, what's not relevant, not an individual person.
Right, I just,
I think that's.
yeah, I just,
So if it's just a.
I mean, there's
Filing, bookkeeping, filing, things like that, but yeah, we should, that's a no brainer.
Yeah, we don't usually file, but there's, be careful what you wish for, but sure, happy to circulate it.
I mean, there's 2 weeks of the mail in there
Yeah.
tonight, so
Sorry, Hatfield told me yesterday that there was the flood maps out.
There's what?
Flood maps out, they were updating, Hatfield got new flood maps.
Hatfield got flood maps.
That's what I heard from the next moderator.
Oh,
today.
interesting. Okay, we haven't, to my knowledge, I don't know that we've received any notification from
Yeah.
FEMA of new flood maps for Whately, but.
Yeah, another thing that Hatfield does way better than Whately does. Is that they're way better at broadcasting public hearings. They actually use Facebook. Who's in charge of the Facebook for Whately?
I think it's some combination of Jessica and Amy.
Well, I think we need to start broadcasting more on Facebook, like when we're having this stuff, because I follow Hatfield, I follow a whole bunch of towns like stuff, and I see Hatfield going off, like, we're having a meeting about this, we're having a meeting about that, here's a notice, here's
That's in
like,
addition to
yeah.
requirements that we have things posted on the Whately website and posted at town offices, so it's just an additional advertising.
But that's what I mean,
It's
but
not
I feel like,
new.
but I
But
feel
it circulates
But
probably.
it circulates, but I feel like that needs to happen in order to get more of the audience.
More
Here,
participation.
from the town, because we can't just be passing stuff with just
Sure,
one person
sure.
in the town.
Well, again, this also, in my mind, raises a general question of just how broad a concern are these?
No, I'm not talking about just this topic,
no, I
I'm
know.
just talking about like a general practice moving forward, I think we need to start doing that, because I feel like it's unfair to a lot of people that, cause. If you're interested in it, a lot of people use Facebook now, a lot of people use Instagram, a lot of people.
Especially older.
Yeah, older
Big
people, and they're
Facebook.
not gonna know. It's like, how many people really look in the recorder, how many people really like pay attention to the posted sign on the wall, how many people really come to the town hall? So I feel like that needs to be another,
This seems like an excellent assignment.
for me, well, this is where I'm
You can be in
kinda,
charge of the town.
that's where I'm kinda hinting towards, cause I
I
feel like
hear
I
that
need to
hint,
start
and I-
doing that.
In on.
Okay, cause I'm fine with doing it, because I just feel like it just will serve a better justice for the community.
You,
I agree.
I,
You know what I mean?
you have my heart blessing.
Yeah,
Comments, it could only be like.
they can just watch.
One.
Statements, yeah.
No, but you're not
That's-
We are having-
It's like a live feed. I think she's just saying to like post that we're
Oh,
having
yes, like,
a meeting.
it's happening.
Here's the
Oh,
link if
yeah,
you wanna watch.
That, here's like, yeah, because when you look at Town of Hatfield's website, they post a legal notice.
Yeah.
Town of Hatfield's read the legal notice, all attend, it's at this time, boom, very straightforward,
Yeah.
because Town of Hatfield just had their rezoning commission thing that my dad was gonna go to, but it failed. Because it was posted on their thing and it got a lot of pushback, I saw there was like a lot of likes, a lot of comments, whatever, and it's not really my place, I wouldn't comment or anything, but the point is that it got publicized.
Yeah.
More than just the newspaper.
Right.
Posting.
It gets more eyes on it.
Get more eyes, and then the younger generation, which again, that's kind of who really needs to start coming to these
Yeah.
things, starts getting.
Then we have
involved.
to do
Preach.
it. Dan,
That's what I'm saying.
Not this guy.
So
Okay.
it's like,
Just so that you know, if someone, neighbor comes to you, hey, I got a question about this. You can't answer a question,
Right,
it has to be, you have to contact the chairman, see us and it's be on the agenda. For the most part.
If, yes, I think,
well, they can ask a question about an existing,
none of us
I mean, I could just say-
individually can speak for the board.
right,
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not even,
I would just tell them, I would say, go on Whately's town website and look it
yeah,
up,
or come to a public meeting and we
Right.
can have a.
we can have a discussion.
yeah,
And then when if someone came in at someone walked in our open comment period right now and they wanted to discuss something. We can. We always tell them we discuss it for our next meeting, so we
Right.
can advertise on our agenda. So
That's gonna be-
community voices, man,
Yeah.
heard on that.
Yeah, okay. So are we
Good.
done for tonight?
yes.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I say,
Okay, motion's been made and adjourned, all in favor? We are adjourned at 7:11 PM.